shoes for ploughs. And most of the young lads, he'd carry them out and he'd put them standing in under the horse's belly. And I've got a photograph of 5 or 6 of my friends, and I'm standing underneath, wondering how tall I am. And once you hit the horse's belly, that was it, you weren't put under there anymore. But Jim was a lovely, lovely man. And it's an extraordinary thing, but he'd allow us on a wet day to come into the forge and turn the pillows. And we'd always turn in our turns. There was great order in the place. And we loved to listen to the ring. He had a beautiful ring on his anvil because his name was Jim Harrington. And there was another Jim Harrington down the other end of the town, and you could actually hear one of them talking to the other on the anvils. They seemed to have some sort of an old ring on them, you know. But the lovely thing about this was we were turning one day, I was very, very young at the time. And a little bird flew into the forge and just perched himself up on a piece of a bar that was sticky into the wall of the forge. And as we were turning the bellows, the sparks started to come up. And the minute the sparks came, the bird got all excited. But he never flew out. And Jim looked up at him anyway and he said, "By God, lads," he said, "and girls," he said, because he allowed girls and boys in the forge. He said, "He's still at it." And we said, "At what?" "By God," he said, "you must never know the story," so he said, "about that little bird and how he got the red breast." And you know, Jim just stopped and we were all spellbound looking up at him. And he said, "Do you know," he said, that little bird on the first Christmas night," he said, "a night," he said, "that was cold with bitter chill. The fire had gone out on the floor of the stable," he said. "And Mary didn't want to wake Joseph because he had had a tough day trying to find a place for them to shelter," he said. "But she looked at Ox and she said to Ox, would there be any chance you would blow on the embers? I'd put some wood on and see would you get the fire going." But Ox only just made a big yawn and stayed where he was. Then she said to the donkey, "Donkey," she said, "would you blow on the embers?" Oh God, what a donkey. He just rolled over, kicked his legs and yawned. It's a strange thing, but she asked the sheep and still nothing happened. And then all of a sudden, Jim said, this little brown bird came fluttering into the stable. Just stayed near the baby for a minute looking at it, and obviously said to Mary he was going to do something about the fire. And just like the little one flittering up at the side of the forge, the little bird ran all the way around the floor and picked some wool off the sheet, picked up little bits of dried wood around, bits of straw, and heaped them all up on top of the embers. And the last little piece he put up on top, there was a burst of flame and burnt the poor little bird's chest clean across. You know, the fire came up and the baby smiled. And Mary, she looked at the little robin and she called it. And she said, "Robin," she said, "you're going to go forward from this day," she said, "with that red chest," she said. "It'll be a blessed reminder for the strong heart that beats inside." The baby gurgled and went to sleep. And Jim looked at us, and we looked at Jim. Jim is dead, and his son Pat is dead. And the reason I remember Pat so well was Pat used to say to me, "That's a lovely story you have about my dad." And when I showed my grandchildren, told it to them in London or America, other cousins, he said they were so happy to know that it was their granddad had told the story of the little robin with the red breast. And I often think about that because Pat is dead now this year. And he was a fine blacksmith as well, worked in London for years afterwards. And Pat said, "Teddy," he said, "when you were a small little boy," he said, "you used to come in," he said, "next door from your mother's restaurant. And you were always looking for tins of beans or tins of peas. And I never thought you were going to turn out to be a storyteller." Because he said, although sometimes when I think about it, you were a bit of a scamp, he said, because we'd make it dry for you. You can't do that with children now. And we'd put our hand up your short trousers, and we'd say, "We got it." And you know, he said, you'd run out the door, and you'd be shaking, and you'd bang the door, you were giving out. And then he said, "One day, I knew you were going to make it," he said, because the door burst open, and there were you, he said, 4 years old, with your pants down around your knees, and you said, "You didn't get it."